All right, guys, today I want to briefly talk to you about something called sighting. And sighting is something that you sometimes refer to as learning the artist's eye. A lot of times the artist's eye or learning the artist's eye is exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about sighting. But in this case, we're going to learn the three major methods of sighting and how to kind of apply them to a drawing. And then what you guys are going to do is apply this to a couple of drawings for the week. So there are three main types of sighting. If you can see my hand here, there's something called thumb sighting. And thumb sighting is where I kind of just take a pencil in hand and then I'm just moving my thumb up and down on here. And that's going to give me a measurement. So like in this camera, I can measure how wide the seat is, or the back of the chair is here with my thumb and this pencil, right? And then over here on my paper, I could demarcate that space. So let me go real quick. I want to make sure it gets all lined up for you guys to see here, and then bam on here. I'm doing the same idea, right? From here to here was that's that width, right? So I have a couple little marks on there then. I could do the same thing with the height of the thing, right? So I can say, what's the height of the back of the chair till we hit the seat, and we can make a nice little mark again like that. And over here, we can say, all right, I'm gonna start the chair up here. Oh, I'm gonna start the chair up here, right? And then I'm gonna make it end kind of down there. And then I'll get an idea of the height. Oh, this pencil is not working for me too well. Let's try again. Here, and then from here to there. Right, and I just have some little marks on there, right? There's just little marks that are giving me some parameters. I can do the same thing going across like this and figure out how wide across the chair is, right? And then every single time I can take another measurement, how far across all the legs are, how far across is it for just a couple of legs. And this is helping you take measurements with something called the thumb technique. I'm using my thumb to find the edge of there. I'm using the pencil point to find the other edge and say, oh, they're that far apart, or how far apart are they at the base down here, right? Or, how far apart are they from this leg to that leg at this point, right? I can kind of measure it up like that. And that's what the thumb sighting technique is about. Now, there's something else called plum sighting technique. And plum sighting technique is when you hold your pencil really, really loosey-goosey in your hand, like it can move around really easy. And we're letting gravity show us what up and down are. So I can tell, like by plum sighting like this, that let's say this leg that's over here is actually at an angle, right? And not straight up and down. And so I can also see that this leg in the back is also at an angle and not straight up and down because this is straight up and down right now. And then the same thing over here, right? I can see that the back of the chair though, although I might not think it's at an angle, is just at a slight little bit of an angle. And I'll notice that, these kind of pull out a little farther. And if I measure it down, I'll notice that it doesn't actually line up with this foot of the chair leg. Instead, it's in a little bit. So it's another way for me to kind of look at or recognize where different things are in a picture by giving myself one vertical line, right? Now, I could also do the same thing. I could go like this and do some horizontal lines if I really wanted to as well. But this is that plum method, and I think it really, really helps to kind of figure out where the weight of things goes, right? And so, keeping very, very, very loosey-goosey. If you're doing a horizontal method like this, or decide to make some horizontal measurements like this using the thumb method, that's fine. Just know that, it's an approximation because you don't have a built-in level in your hand. And you don't really want to have a level either. So then the last of these is something called a clock method sighting. And if I kind of put my hand out here in front of me and I think about tick, 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 the hand on a clock going around, this is what we're looking at here, right? So that clock hand going around a clock is going to help us get some angles. So if I can actually put this just like that, and then when I bring my paper up, this angle stays the same. So I can draw in like a little faint line on there to show that angle. And this helps with perspective quite a bit. So if I'm having a lot of problems with perspective, if I decide to kind of try to find, oh, what direction is this in, can I then transfer that? And as long as I keep a very stiff elbow, right, and I keep this paper at the same height, or the same distance rather each time, then it'll be really easy to do. Now, I'm kind of standing behind a camera here and trying to float this in front of the camera so I'm not moving things around, but I think you get a bit of an idea of how that works. And I'll do some cut down to me using some sighting techniques down here, and we'll see how that goes. All right. All right, guys, so I'm still sitting kind of in that same location. The chair, you can kind of see, is right here behind me a bit. And I'm gonna try to use some sighting techniques so that you can see them on here. I might have to pull this back just a little bit. All right, that might be better. I'm gonna try to use some sighting techniques to kind of give you an idea how some of this works. So one of the first things I'm going to do is to try to figure out how tall this is. And in this case, we're going to try to make this as tall as this pencil. So I'm going to make a mark up here, and then I'm going to flip my pencil around and just kind of make a mark down here, right? And then that's the height of this pencil, okay? And then there's just two little dark marks on there, and that's it. So once I've established that that's the height that I'm going for, then and if you're trying to do this as a one-to-one, sometimes placing the object a little farther away from you also really works. And having something that has some, interest to it is really, really, really helpful during this. So then once I've kind of established that, I got to figure out how wide different parts are. So I'm going to start at the very top of the chair again, and we're going to remember, all right, so last time, if I kind of make this mark in there, and I want to keep this thumb kind of the same, a lot of the times I would actually just move this around a little bit. So then that's the width of the very top of the back of the chair, right? So think about that larger back of the chair will be in there. Then I want to figure out the height. So if I kind of go back in and measure this bit up again, I can say the height of it, hold on. The height of it is about 1 1/3 the same. And I'll take another measurement, and here's my other measurement. So that's the top line that I'm going for, right? And then I can kind of come down and plot another little part of this out. And then I can try to figure out the height all the way to the seat, right? So I'm going to take this measurement again here. So I keep my measurements the same. That's that. Now the height of the seat to the seat of the back is about like this. Oh, let me check that again. It's from the very top. Come on, make a mark. There we go. That'll be to the chair height. And then if I wanted to, I could start to put in some of the things like, the chair starts to go in a direction like this in here. And so I'm just plotting little points along, and that's really kind of the larger idea in here. Then once I get a little farther with this, I'll show you some more. All right, guys, so this is where I got so far with this drawing. So I got my points in. You can still see from the original bit that we were talking about. And I started to measure using the clock method in here to get some of the things like, get this line coming down at the right angle. And this one actually is slightly straighter going down this way. This one comes at a slightly different angle. Then I started doing the same thing to get the chair part. So here's the kind of top of the chair. Although I haven't really put in the slope of it at all, I did get the angle in there, right? And then I started to kind of look at the back of this and get the angle. And I'm using that same clock method idea to come around and get that angle in here too, right? We could keep on pulling this idea. And it's a little difficult for me because I got to learn how to set up this camera a little better for me. Maybe it shouldn't be on the right side. But I can pull that same thing over here and I can get that angle. This is the angle of that chair from where I can see it, and I can just start drawing it in like this. And like I said, in the background over there, it actually comes to a bit of a slope in here. So if I really start to pay attention to how this comes along, this actually slopes down a bit like that and then comes back up again. Maybe I'm making it slope a little too much. But there's a bit of a slope to it like this, and then it comes back into the back over here. So I want to keep that in mind as I kind of move forward on it, that, you know, even though these lines, I've put some of these lines in there, you know, those lines are kind of just for direction sometimes and not always the finalized product, right? So you can make sure that it gets in there a little bit light, and then I'm, you know, working with a bit of a light pencil already anyhow, but I can get a little bit of that tiny bit of a slope that goes on in here. And then the same thing needs to get mirrored into this side a bit as well, because this kind of comes around a bit of a curve at the very end of it down here. Oh, maybe I made too much of a slope, This curves down just a little bit right at the end down in here. You can kind of start to see the underside of it. And there's a thickness to the chair, right? We don't want to think about the thickness to the chair that's in there. So as this is all coming around, you know, we can keep those things in mind as well. This starts to go underneath the here, and then we can start to think about, you know, pulling in this line to kind of be parallel with the line that we already established above it up here. There's that bar that kind of underneath of everything that this metal actually attaches to eventually as it comes around. And then we can start to kind of do the same thing for these legs that we were talking about before. If I back this out just a little bit, we can think about that angle. I'm using that clock method, tick, 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 right? Get the angle down like this, and then I'm bringing it over here, and I'm not changing the angle at all. I'm just trying to get that leg in there, or the direction of it, right? And then I can get the one that's behind it doing the exact same thing. And I'm not really thinking about where exactly they end right now. I'm just trying to get the angle in. Do the same thing over here. Right, and I could do the same thing for the front one that's over here. And I can start to get those, you know, each one of these angled out. And then what I want to do next is to figure out, you know, the length of each one of these as compared to the length of this. So I'm going to use my sighting technique again. So over here, that is literally that long. I'm going to match it up over here. That's that long. I'm going to match it up to that front leg and realize the leg is just a little bit longer than that. So if you can imagine, this actually goes down to about here. That front leg goes down pretty stinking far. But the leg behind it is going to be significantly shorter looking than that in the end. So we'll take this measurement again for me here, over there, and measure that leg. Okay, and that leg actually measures a lot shorter. It's actually going to end about here. So when I look at this distance in there, then I'll know that this leg ends, right? And then that one that's back in here will be the shortest of them, and this one will be a little closer to this size. But that gives you an idea how to start to rough this in using each individual part. And as you go through, then, you know, you need to start to clean up the drawing, like this actually connects together underneath. And these have, you know, a thickness to them. They come off of this bar here. We want to make sure to keep our lines pretty straight in here. And they taper a bit as they come down. And then, you know, that thickness actually leads into this bar that's under here, and this one cuts in front of them a little bit. So there's some racing that needs to take place inside here and so forth, right? But that pretty much demonstrates, you know, a lot of the technique that's in there. I can also see like where this lines up down across here if I just drop that plumb concept. So I can drop a plumb line right in here. And then I'll see how this leg lines up to this plumb line, lines up to this back, and that'll give me another spot where I can start to make some adjustments if I want to. Now, I made this really dark on here so you guys get an idea where it is, but those marks kind of fit in like that, and this starts to become, you know, the beginning of this drawing. So that plumb line, I can take all the way through the whole picture if I want to, or I could actually even, take a plumb line, take a horizontal line across here if I wanted to too, and that might help me with this curve a little bit as well. All right, so that's really it. You guys are going to take this to fruition, so in the end, this really should be, a finished object. This might not just be one object. You could do more than one object altogether. You could do something like the corner of a room or something like that, but this takes you through all the different types of sighting: thumb sighting, clock sighting, and plum sighting, right? And those are the three types of sighting that we should be using when we create this. There's the plum sighting, there's the clock sighting, right? There's the thumb sighting. It's pretty easy to see because I left all the little marks in there.